Good evening, sisters and brothers from around the globe. My name is Dr. Ron Daniels, and I'm president of the Institute of the Black World 21st Century and convener of the National African American Reparations Commission. And we invite you to enjoy this conversation today on the anniversary, the 10th anniversary of the historic Reparations Summit convened in New York. And I'm a little emotional because those images are so powerful. What a gathering that was. And it's for that reason that we're coming together really to share information, to talk about it. And but we'll have some substantive conversation as well. But it's all informal. But we wanted to invite the Pan-African world, the global Black community, to be involved in at least witnessing this conversation. So what we want to do to begin the process, and hoping that our technician can at least stop the screen share so we can see each other a little bit better as we're moving forward here, is we want to, first of all, just begin by introducing ourselves. I've already introduced myself, so I'm going to ask those who are from NAARC, who are present, and there are some who are going to be joining us, particularly Reverend Robert Turner is going to be joining us, whether we would start, and then the sort of the U.S. delegation, if you will, too, because there are some people who may not be with NAARC. They may be charter members who were involved, but let's start with Cam Howard and then just pass it on to our other commissioners, and then I know Sister Nkechi's in the room and others. So Cam.
Greetings, Dr. Daniels, and greetings all of the commissioners, NAARC commissioners, and CARICOM commissioners, past and present, NAARC commissioners, and others who are here as panelists. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm Cam Howard. I am the Executive Director of Reparations United. I serve as a commissioner of the NAARC, National African American Reparations Commission. And along with Dr. Daniels and Dr. Mara Inyet, I am a co-convener of the Global Circle for Reparations and Healing, and certainly happy to be among this august body of reparations enforcers. Thank you.
So you want to pass it on?
Sure, I'll pass it on to Dr. Julianne Malveaux.
Greetings all. I'm Dr. Julianne Malveaux, economist, author, certified public hell raiser, and a member of NAARC.
Pass it on.
I'll pass it on to Robin.
Peace and power, reparations family. My name is Robin Ruth Simmons. I am a proud NAARC commissioner, the founder and executive director of First Repair, and a member of the steering committee of the Global Circle for Reparations and Healing. I will pass it on to Sister Attorney Nkechi.
Greetings and salutations. Thank you very much. I am Nkechi Taifa. I'm an inaugural member of commissioner on NAARC, but I think I heard Ron Daniels say charter member. Is that what it's called?
Inaugural, whatever. It's all good.
I've always said inaugural, yeah, and it's very nostalgic watching those videos. I'm the executive director of the Reparation Education Project and a lifelong member of INCOBRA. Oh, I will pass it to Dr. Cheryl Grills.
Good evening, everyone. Cheryl Grills here, member of NAARC and also a member of the Alliance for Reparations, Reconciliation, and Truth, which is an outgrowth of the California Reparations Task Force, which I served on as an appointee by the governor of the state. I'm also a past president of the Association of Black Psychologists and the Deputy Secretary General of the Global Pan-African Movement. And I will pass it on to
Don Rojas.
Oh, okay. Don Rojas. I was going to say someone else, but okay. Don.
Yeah,
yes, good evening, sisters and brothers, friends, comrades. Welcome to this evening's reparations dialogue. I recognize so many familiar faces who have joined us tonight, including several who were present 10 years ago at the York College in New York City. I have a few other comments to make, but I'll leave that for later.
All right, and Don, it is so great to have Commandante Don here. Our brother, let's give it up for Don Rojas.
Hey, Don Rojas.
All right, all right. All right, I'm going to now pass it to our leader, Professor Hilary Beckles, And I think I got everybody on the U.S. side. I hope I did. If I missed anybody, we can circle back. Do say Reverend Robert Turner will be joining us later on. But Professor Beckles, if you would start, and then we'll get our Caribbean friends and allies engaged as well. So you have the floor, sir.
Well, thank you, Comrade Leader. I must be one of those leaders who lead from behind because I'm never in front of anything. I'm just a part of it. I'm a historian, reparations activist, lifelong Pan-Africanist, and an advocate in this struggle. And I have the task of being the chairman of the CARICOM Reparations Commission. And I will pass it on to, I am Hilary the he. I will pass it on to Hilary the she.
All right.
Okay, good night. Good night, NAARC and the CARICOM family. It's a pleasure to join you for this session. Can't believe it's 10 years already. Yes, I am Hilary the he's understudy. And I have to say I've learned so much from him in the years that I've been privileged to work so closely with him. So it is indeed a joy to be here. I am the program manager for culture and community development at the CARICOM Secretariat. I have responsibility for the reparations portfolio, and I have been doing it since its inception in 2013. So you know how long I've been at CARICOM. And also a proud Pan-Africanist. So it's a joy to join you. Thank you.
And you're passing it to?
Oh, who am I passing it to? I'm going to pass it to Dr. Claudius Fergus.
Thank you very much, and greetings, everyone. I'm happy to be here this evening. I am a historian and now an independent scholar. I'm currently the chair of the Trinidad and Tobago National Committee on Reparations, have been since it was reconstituted in 2023. I pass on to the next person. I cannot see my screen. I'm on my phone and I'm very wary about touching the controls.
You have Dr. Damien Dublin online.
Good evening. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here among familiar faces. Let me salute the great Dr. Ron Daniels and Don Rojas for holding the fort, keeping it alive. I'm chair of the Dominican Reparations Committee since 2014 because I attended the inaugural meeting of the reparations movement when it was started. And I've been chair since. So far, great experience. I mean, linking with the various people and learning and strengthening my resolve. So I'm there holding on. We are actually presently working on a project because Barracoon building.
We'll get into the projects later. We just want the introduction
no
right
problem.
now. Okay, so pass it on, please.
Okay. So who's there? Eric?
Thank you, Damien.
You can't call him Eric now. You got our Chief Eric.
Chief.
Let's get it straight.
Good evening, brothers and sisters of this global leadership architecture. It's a pleasure seeing all of you again. I see all the faces from when NAARC was launched. Special hi to Don Rojas, who has been our link, and of course to the incredible leadership of Ron Daniels. Good to see everyone. Look forward to the conversation.
And you're from?
I'm from Guyana. I'm vice chair of the CARICOM Reparations Commission and chair of the Guyana Reparations Committee. I pass it on to, do we have anyone else? No, I don't. I think that's it from the Caribbean.
You got Dr. Vereen, you've got
oh, I'm not seeing
Ellie Moorhead, you've got
Professor Vereen Shepherd. I pass it on to you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to be able to join. I am joining from New York. I am vice chair of one of the vice chairs of the CARICOM Reparations Commission, but I'm also wearing another hat as vice chair of the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. So I am in New York at the Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. Very happy to be here and happy to have the opportunity to join you, all colleagues, and of course, greetings to Dr. Daniels. And I have to say congratulations to both groups because we are celebrating the 10th anniversary
That's right.
of NAARC and the CRC. So
right.
again, very happy to be here.
Right. All right. So I think we have Shelley Moorhead and we have Dr. Abastu Williams as well.
And Jan.
Yeah, Jam's joined us.
I guess I'll go.
Yes, go ahead, Dr. Moorhead.
All right. My name is Shelley Moorhead. I am the president and founder of the African Caribbean Reparations and Resettlement Alliance. And this year we are commemorating our 20th anniversary. This will be the 20th year of our first engagement with the Kingdom of Denmark. I'm also the former Minister of State for External Affairs for the U.S. Virgin Islands, and also the former Secretary General of the Inter-Virgin Islands Council and chairman of its standing committee. And I'm pleased to be here with all of you, these familiar faces and these colleagues in the struggle.
All right, okay. Dr. Williams. Dr. Williams. Okay, well, maybe they stepped away. We've also been joined by another NAARC commissioner, Jessica and Mitchell. So we're just doing introductions at this stage. So we want to pass it to you for your introduction. Great earrings too.
Oh, thank you. Hi, everyone. Jessica Ann Mitchell. I'm a NAARC commissioner, and I'm the founder of the National Black Cultural Information Trust, where we share news, information, and resources that uplift the collective freedom of Black communities. And I'm just happy to be here among all of you and happy to commemorate this historic gathering.
Great, wonderful. We got everybody in. What I want to do quickly, our next two segments are really I want to, and Donna will join me in this and kind of talking about how we got to the point of having that great meeting. And then we want to have people just, you know, many people saw the video and just any reflections, any memories that you want to share before we get into a sort of brief sharing of the work that's being done in the U.S. By the people who are here talking that way. Then we'll shift on to have people from CARICOM Reparations Commission talk about what is happening there. And then I know that we want Dr. Vereen also to share the work that she is doing as well as a part of that. So let me just be really quick about it. And Dr. Beckles and I often go back and forth about this because I was telling him, I've always shared what an incredible inspiration the action on the part of the prime ministers to demand in the Caribbean nations, to demand reparations for Native genocide and African enslavement. I mean, this was a very powerful statement. And the reason I say that is because the movement ebbs and flows. And so this was something that gave a kind of jolt. And certainly I know Sister Nkechi and Dr. Malvo, you will recall that we were at a meeting of the Congressional Black Caucus convened by Congressman Conyers. And there was even some question that year as whether we were going to do it or not. And we said, no, we got to do this, right? But we decided we were going to turn it into a strategy session, a strategy meeting. And we said there are two things that we think we can utilize to engage and push stronger with the reparations movement in the U.S. We said it was this movement that we had heard about. It was so inspirational. Wow, the heads of state, all of them got together, and we know they ain't all not progressive, but you know what I mean. They're conservative, and they did that. So that was one thing. And then we had stumbled across, and it probably had been out there, this quote by Martin Luther King said, basically endorsing reparations and said, we're on our way to Washington to get our check. And what we determined in that meeting was that we wanted to have this relationship with CARICOM. We said, if we can invite CARICOM to come to the United States with all of this headwind, I mean, that's going to be a tremendous inspiration. So again, you got to remember, you know, we are working on very limited resources. We said we're going to go to 3 cities and we're going to bring representatives to those 3 cities. Well, the reality is we didn't have enough resources to do that anyway. But we did know that we had strong allies, Cam Howard in Chicago, right? Dr. Conrad Worrell, Dr. Ivor Carruthers. I mean, there were so many people there that we could rely on to pull this off. And so we made a decision to invite Ashley Commandante, Comrade Ralph, because it was under his tenure that the decision had been made. And it was fortuitous, though I shouldn't say that he said, well, I can't make it, but I got to send this guy named Hilary Beckles in my place. so instead of Comrade Ralph coming, it was Hilary Beckles. Well, Ashley, we knew that he was the guru anyway. We knew he was the brains behind this because I had been in the Caribbean and various places and everybody was saying Beckles, 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 Beckles. So Beckles came. And as you will recall, Hilary, it was an incredible occasion. Before we had all of these other platforms, because if we had those platforms today, it would have exploded. But I won't go into all the details, but at least 10,000 people witnessed that. And it shot all over the world. And so there was some discussion then about, well, what's his next steps and what can we do and whatnot. And it certainly was not something that we intended to do in IBW for sure. But at the end of the day, we did end up, taking on the task of agreeing to try to do some kind of coordination and whatnot. And one of the highlights, and I'm going to pass it quickly to Don, and you and Hilary may have forgotten this, at a meeting of the Congressional Black Caucus, because, we had this incredible meeting where and Akeisha, you helped facilitate it because we had Ta-Nehisi Coates came. We had Ta-Nehisi Coates, and then we had Gonzalez couldn't come again, but he sent his son, Camilo Gonzalez, the foreign minister, to come. Then Beckles, you heard about it. You said, I'm coming too. So we had this, and John Conyers said that was the most powerful meeting. He was almost in tears. And John Conyers was there. And it was you, Hilary, who called him the legislative champion for reparations, right? And so he carried that mantle. And so later that evening, I'm pretty sure it was at the Marriott Marquis right next door. You, Don, and I, and Dr. Garvey were having a little snack. And I turned to you and I said, Professor Beckles, would you be willing to bring and have a meeting of the CARICOM Reparations Commission in New York? And you said yes. And the rest is history. So that's a quick synopsis about that part. I want to give it to Don for his reflections, and then we're going to open it up for whatever reflections people have on the occasion of that occasion that you've just seen the video of. So Don, you have the floor.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Daniels. I prepared some brief written remarks, so let me go through them very, very quickly. About the conference in New York at York College. Participating in that conference were delegations from some 40 countries and from over 30 states inside of the US. 2 years before the New York event in July 2013, the CARICOM Reparations Commission was launched at a summit of the CARICOM heads of government held in Trinidad and Tobago in July of 2013. Needless to say, the launch of the CRC inspired the formation of NAARC, as did the various reparations actions that had occurred in the US since the days of Callie House and Queen Mother Moore going back several decades. But in the ensuing 12 years from 2013 to today, the world has witnessed countless actions and initiatives and conferences and symposia and lectures and speeches and demonstrations, etc., all dedicated to the pursuit of reparatory justice for the descendants of enslaved Africans who were kidnapped from their homeland and shipped across an ocean. Transatlantic slave trade and chattel slavery will go down in history. I need not tell this group that as one of the most heinous crimes in human history. But today, a global reparations movement has emerged, spanning all of the continents of the world and galvanizing millions of people who love justice, who stand for historical truth and fairness. The legacy of those crimes lives on today in the form of systemic and structural racism, persistent poverty, and those legacies stymie the socio-economic development of our nations and our communities. And on this occasion, I recall Professor Sir Hilary Beckles predicting that reparations will grow into the largest human rights movement in the 21st century. In this Trump 2.0 era, our movement now stands at an historical crossroads, a challenging moment that will test our resilience and determination and will require our maximum international solidarity, coordination, and collaboration. These are some of the questions and issues that should be addressed in our dialogue this evening. Our collective actions in the months and years ahead will determine the direction our movement takes. Today, the reparation movement enjoys broad international support from the United Nations, the African Union, CELAC, and other intergovernmental bodies, and it's moving forward, and we have to move forward with it. And we have to ensure that reparations remains front and center of the agendas of these global institutions, no matter how and where the geopolitical winds blow. Our movement has lots of work to do as we move forward, not the least of which is to mobilize and organize the masses of our people in support of reparatory justice. So let us use our dialogue this evening to further energize our collective efforts. Again, thanks to all who have taken time out of their busy schedules to be here with us. And I really look forward to our discussion in the next couple of hours. Thank you, Dr. Daniels.
All right, thank you very much, Don. Right. Before we get further reflections, I see we have been joined by a couple of other members of the CARICOM Reparations Commission. I see Dobreen and there was one other person. So would you be so kind as to introduce yourselves? Dobreen?
Yes, I am Dobreen Ahmad. I chair the Antigua and Barbuda Reparations Support Commission. I'm also one of 3 vice chairs of the CARICOM Reparations Commission. And it's wonderful for me being here among colleagues, some I haven't seen for a while. And I'm looking forward to the discussions this evening.
All right, and then I see Denise, is it? Denise, is it Denise? Hello, Denise. I see a Denise.
Yeah, Denise is
Yes, hi, yes,
oh,
then I'm here. Good evening. I'm
Would
Denny,
you,
part of the Antigua and Barbuda Reparations Commission.
all right, very good. All right, and I see we have been joined also by Paul Ann. Would you introduce yourself?
Good evening, everyone. Lovely to see you all again. I'm so sorry that I'm off camera, but my name is Pauline Patterson. Dr. Daniels, Executive Assistant. I'm with IBW and wear other hats, but it's lovely to be here. Thank you, guys.
And she's off camera because, Dr. J, she's working on her, literally turning in her her doctoral stuff tonight. In fact,
Tonight? Oh, wow.
yeah, so she should really, we're glad you're here. Then I see Claudius as well. Is it Claudius? I'm sorry.
Yes, I did my introduction already.
Oh, did you? Okay, all right. Well, let's move forward.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, so now we want to spend just people, any reflections? Y'all saw the video, some of y'all, any just memorable moments, anything you want to say about the occasion before we get into the kind of succinct sharing of programmatic work, which is quite important. So Cam, I see your hand up, yes.
Yeah, I just want to lift up the ancestors, some of the folks who were with us 10 years ago who are now in the ancestor realm, certainly my mentor, Dr. Conrad Worrell,
yes,
as well as a few others who are now
Mama
ancestors.
Joanne. Mama Joanne, yes.
Mama Joanne Watson, yes, and those who are, and those, Congressman John Conyers is yes, and those who are ill right now, Jesse Jackson Jr., Reverend Jesse Jackson, Reverend Wright, Minister Abba Muhammad of the Nation of Islam, all are ailing right now. We just want to lift them up. They've, tremendous commitment to the reparations movement in America.
Hey, you get your stuff?
Yes.
Okay, and Kichi, yes.
Yes, one of the things that both Ron and Don neglected to mention is that NAARC gave its inspiration for its 10-point program from the CARICOM 10-point program. I just wanted to lift that up because the inspiration that CARICOM gave to our movement in the United States, it was like an injection of energy. I can't say it any kind. Maybe that's where I got my energy from. I don't know. But it's the first time I even heard the term reparatory justice. Okay. And, as an advocate and someone who done a lot of speaking and talk, we just needed a fresh infusion. Okay. And what NAARC, what CARICOM served to do was to bring that infusion of energy, a renewed narrative, a new language and all into our movement. And I remember Sir Hilary Beckles, and I think you did mention this, Dr. Daniels. I think it was originally calling it the decade of, I forgot, Conyers, something. I forgot what it was, but it was a decade. It was going to be a decade. This is even before the decade of whatever this decade is that just got renewed. My brain is just dead. It's been a long day.
People of African descent, yes.
Yeah. Oh my God, I'm sorry. So anyway, again, much appreciation to everything. And Brother Danny Glover was at that convening as well. I did not know a lot of the names from the Caribbean who were there, but it just opened up new horizons. So I just want to say, Asante Sana, thank you very much for everything that you've brought to this whole world movement for reparations and reparatory justice.
Right. Anyone else? Any other reflections, memorable moments that people want to share? I mean, it can be from the Caribbean or from either way.
Chairman, if I may respond quickly.
Go right ahead.
History sometimes goes around in circles. And when we reflect on the fact that Garvey came out of Jamaica, Malcolm's mother came out of Grenada, and you have now monumentalized that relationship. When we think of Farrakhan coming out of St. Kitts and Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Nkrumah, what that history shows is that we have always been connected to each other in a circle. We have always been infused in each other. Yes, in the Caribbean, all of our civil rights movements came out of the continental movement, so that the relation between the island and the mainland has always been a dynamic interaction, so that Black folks whether on the mainland or on the islands, have always had this kind of mutual enforcing of each other. So yes, I appreciate the point, but the fact is also that when we were thinking of the 10-point plan, we went into the history of what had been going on the mainland. And there was no need for us to reinvent the wheel. All of what we came up with in the 10-point plan had already been a part of the African-American struggle. So all we had to do was to go back to the drawing board and to say, African-American brothers and sisters have been talking about these things for 100 years. So let us put it all together. So I would say that, yes, that the 10-point plan as a model might have come out of CARICOM, but the ideas that produced it came out of the mainland struggle. And I think it's important for me to say that, and always to reaffirm that sisters and brothers on the continent and those on the islands off the coast, man, has always been one struggle,
Right, well, thank you much. Anyone else?
Just a final comment, perhaps.
Go ahead. It doesn't have to be the final one. Go ahead.
Right.
Go ahead.
For me, the biggest reflection or the biggest benefit has been the friendships, whether it's Illinois, Geneva, Accra, New York. We have created an incredible bond. I mean, I see Ankichi all over the place, Cam, whether we're dealing with forced repair and the land issue in Illinois or we're talking to the Pope. I think we have to congratulate ourselves in building this bond and also in bringing the African Union into play, because it was us collectively that brought the African Union into play. So that's just my reflection.
Hey, thank you much. Anybody else? Anybody else? Anyone else?
Okay, I will say a few words. I was also there in 2015 in New York, and I remember it being such a very inspiring period of togetherness. I remember the opening and closing sessions we had at the AME churches in Harlem and in, where was the other one? But it was
1199.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. Those were just powerful sessions. I remember the tribute to Congressman John Conyers, and I'm really so happy now that I had that opportunity to meet him then, since he's no longer with us now, but still guiding us. And I think that really, and earlier today I took a look at the report that I had written for CARICOM after the meeting, and I can see that, you know, some of the things that we spoke about then, that we wanted the African Union more involved in the reparations movement, that we wanted the exoneration of Marcus Garvey, that we wanted to build a stronger youth movement. I think there are things that we can see we have progressed on since that first encounter. We have built a strong partnership. We know we have brothers and sisters that we can call on at any time. I was on a panel today with Nkicha, and we had a good exchange there too. And so it really has been a very important journey that we have set out on together, which we are still on. I think we can see the achievements, and we will speak more about them during the course of the evening. But I remember it as a very inspiring beginning, and which memories that I still cherish of that first encounter. So congratulations again on the 10th anniversary.
Well, thank you very much.
To you, Ron, for your incredible leadership.
Well, I just want to say a quick word about the different events we held, because they were both inspirational and all of that. But internally with IBW, we did not have the money to do this. I mean, we and I can recall the board meeting in which and Don, you were there when we asked permission to move forward. We were broke. We put all of our little meager chips in the middle of the table. And so we asked all of you, if you can get here, we said we will house you and feed you and whatever. We had a transportation system and all of that. So it cost us roughly $45,000 to pull this event off. And those events were both celebratory and inspirational, but you remember that each one of them, we raised some money. We was doing the Jesse Jackson, who got 1,000, who got 500, whatever. And I'm proud to say we actually raised $42,000 from those three.
Wow. Wow.
And then we went back and we asked people, we were short, 3,000, and we made an appeal and maybe we got 46, but we made it. You know what I mean? This was strictly, an effort that we didn't know how it was going to go, but we trusted the people and the turnout was good. I mean, and that last evening where they created the African Village effect and all that was really a remarkable event. Okay.
Amazing.
Okay, Julianne, I see your hand up. Yes.
Absolutely. I just wanted to, first of all, thank Cam for lifting up Sister Joanne Watson. She and I have been close forever. And so I've just been sitting here quiet thinking and just thinking about her and the many, many contributions she's made to the movement, both in terms of her work in Detroit on the city council, her work with NAARC, and her support for basically everybody. That sister actually tried to get me to move to Detroit one time. And I actually considered it, but I only considered it for a minute. I don't have a Detroit personality, but or maybe I do, and that would be the problem, mixing all that up. But she was just an amazing woman, and her relationship with John Conyers, of course, was also so very, very special. Also, some of the people, well, especially when I think about Dr. Carruthers, she did leave us to go on and found the Samuel DeWitt Proctor group, but her input was very important as well. So all too often we Black people forget about those who came before, or we remember you couldn't forget John Conyers if you tried to. I mean, he made an indelible mark on everyone. But I want to lift them all up and just say that the NAARC has had stages, and each stages, everyone has had a role in their stage.
Yeah.
And some have necessarily moved on, either transition or moved on to do other things. But I think that when we look at where we were in 2015 with the reparations movement and look at where we are now, what we have seen is exponential growth.
Yes.
I don't know how many, Robin knows better than I do, but the last time we had a first repair meeting I think there might have been 100 cities.
Yeah,
if I'm wrong.
We're going to have a report on that. That's where we're moving into.
But the exponential growth is something to pay attention to and essentially to embrace.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to our next phase of our program now, and we want to do some sharing. It's impossible to do extensive reports, so what we want to do is do a quick sketch of what's happening in the U.S. side, and then we'll go to our colleagues and comrades in the Caribbean, and certainly one of the climactic events we certainly wanted Kichi to talk about. She's working on a huge project that's coming off in May. But Cam, we wanted to start with you because HR 40 was John Conyers. And let me just say parenthetically, one of the other things that we put into that document was we wanted to have a relationship with Black Lives Matter. We wanted to build that relationship. At that time, we didn't realize that it was not only Black Lives Matter, but movement for Black lives in the United States too. They were kind of corollary movements. And as the bill was restructured, we want to make you aware of the fact that during our work, we did engage them. And they actually were involved in helping to transform the HR 40 from just a study bill to a remedy bill. So that worked out as well. Cam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Daniels. I want to begin right there where you stated that we revised HR 40. And I have to say that, as Nkechi said, there's been inspiration from CARICOM on NAARC's 10-point platform. There's been inspiration or input or stamp on HR 40 from CARICOM as well. As you all know, NAARC was inspired by CARICOM. And at our first meeting, we talked about HR 40, and I gave a report. I was the Legislative Commission chair at the time. I gave a report that HR 40, as it was written, was obsolete. And Dr. Daniels, in his brilliance and wisdom, said, well, let's revise it. And we revised it, turning it from a study bill to a remedy bill. I was appointed to be the lead writer of that legislation. That legislation was adopted. In this current phase, HR 40 has been picked up word for word in several jurisdictions across America, state of California, the city of Washington, D.C., and many others. So when we pass legislation in America.
Uh-oh, what happened? Uh-oh, what happened to Cam?
His phone must have dropped.
You must have. Okay, we'll pick it up. Let's pass it on to
Sorry,
okay.
I'm gonna take
Okay.
I'm gonna take Robin's camera for a second.
Okay.
Mine went out. So when we pass legislation in this country that was patterned after HR 40, just know that NAARC, I mean the CARICOM is also part of that. So thank you for that. HR 40 had historically been a bill introduced in 1989. It was primarily a mobilizing tool in the movement. But when NAARC revised HR 40 and it was reintroduced in 2017, and Congressman Conyers unfortunately had to leave office in 2018, end of 2018, it was picked up by Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, our new leader, and she took off with the legislation and did some magnificent work around it, having the first hearing on HR 40 since 2004. And then subsequently in 2019, she had a second hearing in February to start the new Congress. And then 2 months later, she moved the bill to committee and had it voted out of committee, out of the Judiciary Committee, where it was to be sent to the House floor for a full vote. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get a vote. The Democrats who were in power did not want to bring the bill to a vote, fearing that it would harm them in the midterm elections. They wound up losing the Congress in the midterm elections in 2021, and they have not gained the Congress since. And so the momentum of HR 40 has reached its peak. Right now, we have a new, unfortunately, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee transitioned in June of last year. And in fact, I think it was on right around June 19th, which is a historic holiday for people of African descent in this country. And there was some fear of who would take up the legislation after her transition. Her daughter came in and was appointed to be the Congresswoman to fulfill her the rest of her term. I think it's about 3 or 4 months she fulfilled her term. And then in 2025, at the start of this Congress, it was picked up by Boston Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who's a progressive and is looking forward to push the legislation forward. Right now, we're back into utilizing it as a mobilization tool, as an education tool, and also to talk about what it was designed to do as far as move it from a study bill to remedy bill. The initial bill was designed to study whether or not there was continued impact and injury among current living Black folks, Black Americans, as a result of the crimes of enslavement and apartheid era, Jim Crow crimes, and some of the crimes post-1965. But this bill begins with that there is continued impact, and we must study to determine what's the degree of that continued impact, and then we must craft proposals to address that impact in all of its manifestations. And here's one of the newer parts of it is that those proposals must be in alignment with the international norms of full reparations and special measures. As we know, full reparations have 5 components: cessation, insurance, and guarantees of non-repetition, restitution, compensation, satisfaction, and rehabilitation. So we inserted the international standard for reparations in this legislation, and we think that that's something that the entire African world needs to be aware of and to replicate in their legislation going forward around the country. So HR 40, we have 75 co-sponsors. Again, we're utilizing those co-sponsors in the hope that the Democrats take control of the Congress in 2026. 2027. At that point, we can move the legislation directly to a vote for in the committee. We won't have to go through all the processes again and then try to move it through House. We do not believe that this legislation, we never believed that it would make it out of the Senate because of the Senate rules on filibustering. You need 60 votes, a supermajority to pass it. And we will always wanted to move it toward a presidential executive order. We're in a position where that's unlikely, but there's still, there's still work we can do on a federal level, and we're doing that work. And so HR 40 is still a mobilizing tool. It's premier legislation in this country. And again, many cities and states are modeling their reparations bills after HR 40, and we lift it up to the African world to do the same. Thank you, Dr. Daniels.
All right, thanks. Let's make the rest of them a little bit more succinct, because otherwise we won't, we will be here quite a long time. So we want to make them tighter. Robin, what's happening with state and local reparations? You just had a special visitor who showed up in Evanston and saw that beautiful, beautiful resource center. I knew when he looked at it, he would say, I know he would love it because it is super bad.
It is.
Ruth Simmons, give us a succinct sort of sense of what's happening with state and local reparations, the symposium and the resource center.
We did have a special visitor. Everyone doesn't know, so I have to say that the Sir Hilary Beckles was in Evanston, Illinois. He lectured at Northwestern and was gracious enough to make time before he left to visit the National Resource Center for State and Local Reparations. We were able to have a great discussion, and I am so honored. We are in momentum in the US. Local initiatives are passing regularly, being introduced often. At First Repair, we are supporting many. We have supported over 100 directly. At our most recent symposium, 76 unique reparations initiatives were there. That included just under 300 attendees over a 3-day symposium. We have not had a symposium yet where CARICOM didn't represent. Thank you so much to our brother Eric Phillips for joining us that first year, where there were only about 50 of us in my church. And we have grown now to overtaking the downtown Evanston Hilton in Evanston. We have big and small cities, predominantly white cities like Amherst, Massachusetts, predominantly Black cities like Detroit, Michigan, the states of Illinois, California, New York. Maryland just passed. It's pending a governor signing. And we are seeing more and more commitments from faith denominations, houses of worship, and so on. We are having more and more ally support. There's an incredible study that's done by Al Tillery at Northwestern. If you want to see more about sentiment study, there is other wonderful scholarship supporting our case when we are out advocating. Professor, what is his name? Cornell Brooks at Harvard did a study or report on how many ways the government is paying reparations today, just not to Black folks. So that's been a good tool for us. But we're convening here in the United States. I'm in New York now as well. We are also convening with the global African community, understanding now that we are part of a larger effort for reparations. And so just really excited to see how the local movement is growing, expanding, learning from what's happening with CARICOM leadership and learning from what's happening all over the global Africa, in fact, and implementing some of those ideas and best practices and learnings in our own communities. I want to lift up the Resource Center, officially launched Black History Month of this year with a tribute to the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. We had a soft launch during the symposium, but we've had programming, rich programming every month, at least one public event. We've had community organizations coming to be in the space. They want to learn. They want to get a part of the reparations movement. We've had our Chamber of Commerce. We've had various organizational board of director meetings there. We've had multiple classes, including the Obama scholars that have come and had sessions at First Repair. We've also had some high schools and other colleges as well. And then there was one other thing, the symposium. The symposium's been growing. We had our fourth, our fifth is coming up always the first weekend of December in Evanston. And we are looking forward to inviting CARICOM again. Anyone is welcome. Sir Hilary, everyone would love to meet you one day also, if you're able to make it. But any representative is really appreciated. And you can learn more about what's happening in the local movement at firstrepair.org. There's really too much to share and so much more I would like to say, but we're also being challenged. So I want to be really fair as well. We are being challenged. The administration is not friendly to this work. I don't think anyone is surprised about that. Evanston has a lawsuit. It's not our first. Other cities have lawsuits as well. It has not stopped us giving reparations. Another hat that I have is the chairwoman of the Evanston Reparations Committee. And we have outside legal counsel that is supporting the city of Evanston pro bono, very high power firm, Jenner and Block, who also just recently got an executive order against them from President Trump, but we're still dispersing. So we have dispersed just shy of $6 million in direct benefits to Black folks in Evanston, Illinois. We have 15 million more to go. It's going out as soon as we collect it in tax revenues. We're using our cannabis sales tax revenue and our real estate transfer tax revenues to fund reparations. And lastly, I have to lift up the interfaith community, not just in Evanston, but all across the United States. They are really adding great value, power, and tangible support to the reparations movement. In Evanston, they raised $1 million in about 5 months. I understand in Boston, there is a $50 million commitment that was just announced, and we're seeing that all over the United States. And I will stop there. Thank you all.
All right, thank you very much, Robin. Let me just also say that the symposium, but in the resource center, this is one of the most strategic investments that we've made collectively, because what that means is there is a place where people can share and learn, rather than trying to all do it on themselves by their own and whatever. So it is an incredibly important institution there in Evanston, Illinois. Let's now go to Dr. Cheryl Grill. She had the privilege of getting beat up. No, I'm just saying it was tough. California was the first one, but Lord, it was a rough struggle. And Dr. Cheryl Grills was heading up the engagement part of that commitment. And so, Dr. Grills, if you could give us a succinct kind of notion of the outcomes and kind of where things stand now.
Yeah, thank you. And beat up is an understatement, but and it wasn't from the outside primarily, it was from our own people. So that's a discussion for another time. But I want to start with just very briefly the significance of the California Reparations Task Force. We had the distinction of being the first state-sponsored reparations effort that was highly watched across the country. And when we first started, there was only a handful of formal city and county municipalities undertaking reparations. And that has expanded, as Robin was saying, to well over 100 plus. And we had several major accomplishments that I think other efforts across the country are trying to see how and to what extent they can replicate it. So, for example, we had a very successful, although rocky sometimes, 2-year task force process that included monthly hearings with scores of expert witnesses from around the country, and at every hearing, ample time dedicated to public comment from the general public. We produced an 1,100-page report that included extensive documentation of harms, both local to the state and nationally, that provided a clear and compelling case for reparations, and that led to us putting out 115 legislative policy proposals that were guided by the 5 UN standards for reparations. That report, I think, in part, well, I'll first say that, and you know, we're in a society where everybody's challenging anything Black, all right, and anything that tries to speak our truth. We have not had one credible affront to our report. People have not been able to pick it apart. So we do think it is a model that others could follow. The other thing that I wanted to lift up, and I started kind of speaking to this in my public comment today in the PFAD meeting, we had an extensive community engagement process with listening sessions and a statewide survey and poll. So between January and August of 2022, we selected 7 what we called anchor organizations. These were Black-led, Black-focused organizations, powerhouses in their own right across the state that use their networks to engage the community. And we held 17 community listening sessions across the state. On average, each listening session had at least about 51 participants. We did the survey, and then that survey, we sampled 4,433 Californians. So we didn't have to rely on who's the loudest voices in the room, who could show up to a hearing, or who did a problematic and poorly worded polling process. And that survey gave us some evidence that we needed, that in fact, over 60% of Californians, in fact, supported some form of reparations, including financial compensation, community investments, educational opportunities, investments for Black businesses, et cetera. We also sparked interest and attention from philanthropy, who started, in some instances, for the first time, funding reparations efforts. And lastly, I'll say that when the task force sunset, it was a 9-member task force. 6 of the 9 of us actually came together and, along with some anchor Black organizations in the state, formed the Alliance for Reparations, Reconciliation, and Truth. And that the purpose of this entity was to continue the work that the task force started, because the hardest part is not necessarily getting some kind of something passed in legislation or what have you. It's getting it implemented to the spirit and letter of its intent. And so we have been working very closely with the California Legislative Black Caucus, who have been rolling out what they're calling reparations legislation, and giving them feedback, helping them to shape or reshape it. And in some instances, going silent on them because it doesn't really meet the litmus test. And in some instances, if pushed, coming out against them. So I'll stop there.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Grills, for some incredible work. Let me quickly say that, as was pointed out earlier, Maryland has just moved forward. We would anticipate, unless he has a change of heart, that he will sign the Maryland bill. We also now have a New York State Reparations Commission. I am working on that commission, and we are learning from California, and we think that it will have significant results as well. So that is the movement is moving in a very, very positive direction. I want to call on Jam now, because I know that she may have to leave, as she indicated earlier. And the reason I'm doing that too is because there have been some challenges around issues raised about in the state space, but in general, that Jam has been working on along with other members of NAARC. So Jam, would you please share what you've been up to?
Sure. Along the way, we've encountered a number of communications issues directly related to mis and disinformation about the reparation movement overall, but specifically also about the work that NAARC is doing. And so a lot of this misinformation has to do with a concept called lineage-based reparations, in which through a series of communications online and also vocally in person, people have expressed ideas that mostly do 3 things: minimizing access to repair, minimizing areas of harm, and minimizing the types of repair. So hyper focusing on cash reparations, minimizing access to repair by trying to make different members of our community jump through hoops in order to attain reparations, seeking to force people to do DNA tests, seeking to force people to directly prove slave ancestry or ancestry related to an enslaved person within the United States of America, and basically engaging in, I think there's room for various perspectives, but when those perspectives directly engage in misinformation about what the movement is working on and doing, that's where there becomes issues. So one of the ways that NAARC responded was focusing on and uplifting comprehensive reparations. And we focused on comprehensives because we felt that many people would understand that we're talking about reparations through a holistic lens and scope. We are identifying 3 eras of harm: the transatlantic slave trade and chattel slavery, also known as the Ma'afa, Jim Crow, and modern day systemic racism. We uplift the mantra that we hear Dr. Daniels say all the time: all Black people that have been harmed by America in America deserve to be repaired by America. And we're advocating for full reparations, which is an international standard. Also focusing on the 5 areas of intended outcomes. NAARC also released a press statement specifically detailing what comprehensive reparations for Black America is, stating that the criteria and eligibility for comprehensive reparations should be determined by the remedy. So there will be many different remedies that include various eligible parties. So there would be remedies for slavery, remedies for Jim Crow, remedies for systemic racism, remedies that address the various types of harm and the various affected parties. We also highlighted that we want to avoid nativism in the reparations movement and not let people or bad actors try to make us hyper-focus on pointing fingers at each other on whether or not we are a direct descendant of people that were enslaved in the United States, or if we're descendants of Black immigrants from other ethnicities. So we also highlighted that even though we're saying we want to avoid nativism in the movement and that it is holistic, that still doesn't mean that we're against specific reparations for specific harmed groups, as in Georgetown University slave descendants and Bruce's Beach and Tulsa Race Massacre descendants, or Gullah Geechee. We are talking about looking at reparations from a comprehensive, holistic view, that there is more than one answer for repair. There is more than one harmed party for repair. And that, once again, reparations are an ongoing struggle. So we continue to fight back on misinformation, dealing with the movement by offering our folks what we know of as that clean glass of water that has all of the information available for people to understand what we're really working on in terms of healing and repairing Black America for all of us.
Okay, thank you very kindly. We only have a couple of more areas before we yield the floor to our comrades in the Caribbean. We'd next like to go to an area that CAM has led in many of these different areas, but certainly we just want to make you aware of the, well, let me first go to an effort that we're making around creating a financial trust authority. If you read the 10-point program, you'll see that that's one of the things that's called for in terms of the work of NAARC. And so we've had a task force working on that. Unfortunately, Justin Hansford is not here to report, but Cam and Dr. Malvo have been involved in it. So I don't know, Dr. Malvo, would you like to take the lead in just giving us a succinct sense of what it is we're trying to do and the kind of progress we're making?
Sure. Let me say, Justin and Cam and I have met on a couple of occasions, maybe 3 or 4. Justin has really taken the lead in finding a law partner for us. Basically, we want to take the Reparations Finance Authority, turn it into an official body, with all the bells and whistles aboard, And so we have a draft of some bylaws, but we have a couple of lawyers who've worked with Justin, and they are and they've been regular in reporting back. So we're not far away, but we're not close either. We're somewhere midway along the way in terms of getting this established. The reason why we want to have such a finance authority is because, first of all, we know that we're looking at governments, federal, state and local governments for reparations activity, but we know that there are others who also basically have harmed, whether they be the railroads. They look at the railroads and the work they did. Ariva Martin and I did some work with St. Louis University, where those Jesuits actually had imported Black people from Maryland and had them trek from Maryland to St. Louis so they could help build that university. Ariva has been successful in getting the university to make some acknowledgement, but the acknowledgement has not yet come with any cash. And so but there are lots of entities like that. We know that there are many who benefited from enslavement. And basically, they all need to be held accountable. Some will work with us voluntarily, others will not. But the first step, though, was have a reparations finance authority. We have some allies who've acknowledged their benefit from enslavement, and in some cases have even asked, what can we do? And so the reparations finance authority will be positioned to accept dollars and to then distribute them, depending on what depending on who asked for them and what kind of things that we all agree on. As an example, I always call them those white folks, but that's not nice. You know what white folks? Who are the white folks, Rod? The allies who
the Front for Reparations Now, you're talking about it. That's right.
Yes, and they agreed to work with the folks around Elaine, Arkansas, in particular. So some folks want to work on certain things, and that's cool because the amount of damage, I have to say, this gets a little emotional because I'm taking me forever to write my book, but it's because I find another thing every time I think, you find another thing. This has been so systematic in terms of what has been done to our people. And it's not all about money. It's about so many other things. We can't just reduce this to cut the check because we need to look at the psychological damage. My thing is always two things. One is the whole issue of economic envy, where we couldn't have anything. If Black people had anything, that became incendiary for white people. Not only that we couldn't have anything, but I also believe that lynching in particular had a discouraged Black accumulation, discourage us from accumulating wealth because the consequences of accumulating wealth, frankly, in many cases, were death. And I'm not going to get all into it because I know we have limited time, but I would simply say the Reparations Finance Authority represents one manifestation of the multifaceted ways that we have to look at making our people whole. Cam, you want to add anything?
Well, let me just do this. Let me do this as well because I want to do a segue. I want to do a segue, but I also just want to point that one of the key targets to our financial institutions, corporations, and whatnot. But that's a nice segue, Cam, for you to fill in, but also to talk about the slavery disclosure ordinances and redress movement as well. And again, we want to move as fast as possible because there's a lot going on, but I want to make sure our Caribbean colleagues have plenty of time to report as well. Go right ahead.
Sure, I'll be very quick. As Dr. Malvo stated, we hold that there are two classes of criminals, and those can be broken down. First class is the governments, federal, state, and local. And then we have what we call non-governmental complicit actors or non-governmental criminal actors. And those are the corporations, the institutions, the prominent families. And we have in the past looked at how to approach them. And one form of governmental approach was using a slavery disclosure ordinance. Slavery disclosure ordinance is a law that any jurisdiction can craft, state, federal, or local, that requires an entity that wants to do business, wants to contract with the city, with that jurisdiction, that they have to disclose, research their records, and disclose whether or not they had any ties or complicities, profit, et cetera, with enslavement. And if they did, they would have to disclose that to the municipality. In 2000, State Senator Bill Owens crafted the first Massachusetts state legislation in Massachusetts After that time, about 20 other cities crafted them from 2002 on up to about 2012. The problem with those legislations, they were never enforced. So we took it upon ourselves at Reparation United and NAARC Assistance to craft a new legislation entitled the Enslavement Era Disclosure and Redress Ordinance, which mandates full disclosure, not only to the legislator, but also to the public. These entities, if they want to do business, they have to disclose to the legislators, but also have to have a public disclosure. Secondly, it mandates that they not only disclose, but they have to submit a statement of financial redress. And that statement of financial redress can be as little as 0 or as much as that entity determines that it wants to commit. And the reason we can't mandate a particular amount is because our lawyers felt that it would be unconstitutional, would be challenged constitutional. But we can, the city can mandate that they submit a statement of financial redress, and whatever they put in that statement of financial redress would be a determinant of whether or not they get that that contract. And finally, it mandates that a redress fund is established by that jurisdiction to house those funds. And of course, we're looking at the finance authority as well as we approach national and international criminal entities that would like to do business in a particular jurisdiction in this country. So it gives us another opportunity to get resources, but also another opportunity to maintain to build justice. And finally, I was just going to say, Dr. Daniels, in 2014, we went up against the Norfolk Southern Railroad in Chicago. At the time, it was an $8 billion corporation, and they wanted to buy 101 lots from the city in order to expand their rail yard. And they had to file a slave disclosure in order to do that. And once they filed a disclosure, we went and we said, you cannot sell this land unless they submit redress to our community. The city decided not to do that, and they sold the land. And within a month, that corporation went from an $8 billion corporation to $11 billion corporation. That was in 2014. Today, it is a $57 billion corporation. And you have these entities acting all around us every day in our communities, and they're not contributing to the redress of our community. The Slave Disclosure and Redress Ordinance is one way that we can bring those entities to the justice table. And if you go to reparationunited.org, we have a tab that has that Slavery Disclosure Order Toolkit. It's a legal toolkit that's crafted by a law team and the Howard University Movement Law and Clinic that helped us draft the legislation, some do's and don'ts, and it's available to all of us. We had it submitted in the state of Illinois in January, trying to get it passed. There's about 4 or 5 cities, as well as the state of New York, with Dr. Daniels' help, we'll be looking at introducing it as well. But it's something that we think every jurisdiction, especially a jurisdiction that is Black controlled, should craft at the federal level, as well as state and local levels.
Thanks much, Cam. Really appreciate it. Let's now go to Nkechi Taifa to talk about the work of the Reparations Education Project, but also a significant event that's about to happen to galvanize reparations activists and organizers in the United States and beyond.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to be very, very brief. We've talked about work. We talk about the states and what's going on in the states. We talked about the local jurisdictions. We talked about the slavery disclosure. We talking about the finance authority. But you know, sometimes we need to celebrate. We need to celebrate all these great victories that are going on all across the country. So there's going to be a national reparations rally, okay, on May 17th, the weekend of the centennial of the Malcolm X birthday in Washington, D.C. It's not a lobbying event. It's not a this or that. It's for the movement to come together. The rally has been endorsed by over 100 organizations across the country. And it's a time for us to just get together and feel good, pat ourselves on the back, because that is needed and that is necessary so that we can have the strength to be able to move on. So that's all I want to announce. So I want to get to our Caribbean colleagues, and I'm going to have to make an errand, but I'm going to be on my phone on mute as I'm making my errand. So back to you, Von Daniel.
All right, thank you so much, to all our colleagues. And now we want to yield the floor to Professor Sir Hilary Beckles to navigate through the reports, sharing in whatever way our comrades choose from the Caribbean.
Okay, well, thank you, Comrade Leader. And I wish to endorse the concept of celebration. I think there's much to be celebrated. Let me tell you this quickly. I know it isn't much time. I arrived at JFK 2 weeks ago, and immigration officer, he said to me, sir, what brings you to our country? And I said, sir, I am here to give a speech. He said, okay, a brother who looks just like you, man, just spoke for 24 hours and 4 minutes, man. he said, how much time do you need? I said, well, I need 2 days. I'm just here for 2 days. He said, no, man, you're going to need a day to prepare. You're going to need a day to recover. I'm giving you 5 days. So the idea was I was supposed to speak for 5 hours, man. You know, for 5 hours, I couldn't do that. But anyway, here we are. But listen, let us begin with some basic concepts. I'm going to make 3 statements, and please, if you think they're hyperbolic, you must let me know, but it's how I feel about it. Don made reference to 2001, the Durban conference, the UN conference in Durban, which was a seminal moment for all of us. That was the moment when we all woke up and saw the reality as it was. When the US pulled out of that conference and the European Union threatened if reparations is on the agenda, they're out of here. And it was a clear moment for all of us. And we came away from that moment. And I did give a speech in which I said, you know, this is 2001, but this century is going to be the century of reparations, and it's going to be the greatest political movement of the 21st century. It will be. Many of my friends said, Beckles, you know, it's a bit hyperbolic, a bit extreme, but I was absolutely certain in my mind from what I had seen and heard that this movement was going to gallop, and it was going to be up to all of us to find a way to provide direction. And so I think we divided our work into three distinct projects. There was going to be some knowledge construction. We had to build some knowledge, some new knowledge around what we were doing. A lot of historical work, a lot of community work, but some ideas, a lot of new ideas. Then I thought we will need some new strategies. Some very new strategies had to be put on the table. And finally, we had to spend some time visioning. I'm not a believer in the notion that vision is for a few visionary people. I believe that visioning is how you use your imagination with the evidence available to you. So some visioning was required. And so it was clear to all of us that what we had to do was to convert this episodic moment, eruptive concept of reparations into a movement. And we had to build a movement. And the big paradigm was going to be to shift from moments to a movement. Yes. We could not continue where there was a major event, one of our brothers and sisters is murdered, is a massive crime against one of our people communities, and we would erupt and we would deal with it and we would cool off and settle down. That approach had to end. We had to make this a movement, not a collection or a series of moments. And I think we have done that, and that is why I think we should celebrate. We have done that. But in order to do that, there were some things we had to do. And Ron, when you reached out to the CRC, the CARICOM, to let us integrate our struggle, that was the kind of visioning that we needed, because the CRC came into being because grassroots organizations had been talking about reparatory justice for over 100 years, but our governments were never on board. Our governments were never on board, and it took us some time to persuade our governments to join with civil society. So when you speak about all the CARICOM governments coming together, that was a major moment of celebration, because it was a victory for the grassroots that finally we persuaded our governments that had been critical or indifferent to this struggle from way back when. But we were able to bring them, and for the first time in Caribbean history, governments and civil society were on the same page. And when NAARC came and we created 10 years ago this relationship, this was the critical infrastructure that we needed then to pursue what I thought then was the second major objective. And we've heard that second major objective was to bring Africa on board. It was to bring Africa on board because at Durban, Africa turned its back, or African governments turned their backs on the diaspora. We had civil society with us, but we didn't have the governments with us. And it was one of those moments in history where civil society and governments are not on the same page. Because you may recall at Durban, civil society was meeting in one arena and the governments in another arena. And in the civil society arena, the African people, the church, the trade unions, the educators, the theologians, and all of them were speaking about we are in solidarity with the diaspora. But in the next arena where the governments were, they were saying, no, we can't deal with that. And they turned their backs on us. But we knew we had to do this. But we could not do it without the solidarity that we created. So the CRC NAARC infrastructure was precisely what we had to do to get out there and do the hard work in Africa, do all of that evangelical work that had to be done and to pull those governments over. And we were able to do that because we function at the level of universities, trade unions, local communities, but critically the CARICOM governments went to work on the African governments. And that is why we have to give credit to Mayor Motley and to Ralph Gonzalez, because they hit the African trail and told those African governments, listen, the time has come. So when the African Union met and declared in Ghana, and you were there, Ron, that we are going to be speaking on the same voice with our diaspora on this matter, and critically, 2025 will be declared the year of reparations in Africa. That was a major historic achievement, and we've pulled it off. Now we have to deal with some other matters, and I want to say by way of closing that we now have to redefine Pan-Africanism. At the moment, there is a split in the Pan-African intellectual discourse. There are many Pan-Africanists who are not supportive of the reparatory justice movement. There's a view somehow that the reparatory justice movement is a distraction from the deepening of African economic transformation and its social and political enlightenment. So we have some pushback from an element within the Pan-Africanist movement, and we have to persuade them, no, 21st century Pan-Africanism has to depart from 20th century Pan-Africanism. 20th century Pan-Africanism was about gaining independence for African nations, bringing an end to apartheid. It was about all of those struggles. And let's face it, those struggles are over. Where is the center of gravity now? It is the reparatory justice movement. And critically, Pan-Africanism has to redefine itself away from the polarity of mother country, diaspora, home and away. That dichotomy where Africans abroad and Africans at home are involved in this kind of that conversation is over, colleagues. Jamaica is as legitimate a nation as Nigeria. Barbados is as legitimate a Black nation now as Senegal. These are Black nations all over the world now. They are Black nations, and we have Black communities, powerful communities, as the African-American community in the USA, the Brazilian people, Colombia. So that notion of home and away, mother and children, I think we have to dismantle that and look at global Africa, which is why we're now saying global Africa, because there are African nations and African communities everywhere. And we have won that debate intellectually. And this is why at the United Nations, where they have been sponsoring the general history of Africa for 30 years, that is why they have just said, Volume 9 of the Global History of Africa has to be entitled Global Africa. No longer that paradigm. We are moving on. The other issue we have to address is this big vexing question of knowledge, where most African people all over the world somehow believe that our African people sold us out. We have to get over that. It is historically inaccurate. It is historically inaccurate, but this is how the Europeans wrote the history. They wrote the history that they arrived in Africa and the African governments made a deal. And it was a negotiation. It was a brokerage between two groups of merchants. And that is absolutely have to be rejected. It is historically inaccurate. I wish to give an example. Azimanjru, the great scholar, African scholar, said, well, you know, he was giving a speech in London to some students, and he said to them, this is the best way to understand this issue. I want you to understand, if you are at home as a man with your wife and your daughters, and someone breaks down your door, come into your living room and put a gun to your head, and he says to you, I'm going to rape your wife or I'm going to rape your daughter. And you, the man of the house, you are going to choose which one. If you don't choose, I will rape them both. And the man has to make that decision because the gun is to his head. Now, he asked the students to imagine, what are the options? What are the options? But what was interesting was that I was there. The students said, whatever the options were, whatever decision was taken, that household was going to descend into psychological madness. If he chose the wife, if he chose the daughter, whoever he chose, all of them are going to be psychologically destroyed as a result of the choice. Who writes the history? The guy with the gun wrote the history. The guy with the gun wrote the history and said, well, you know, I had a negotiation with a man and he told me to take his wife, you know, and that is how the history was written. So we have to get back out there and do that piece of work. It has to be done. The final point, colleagues, is in respect to where CARICOM is at right now. And we are at the moment where the governments have said to us to prepare a negotiation strategy to deal with this matter of repair. And we've said to them, well, the Commission is prepared to negotiate financial or other forms of reparations with civil society organizations. If banks and insurance companies and universities, if they want to pay repair, we will negotiate. If the Church of England wants to fund something, we will negotiate. But the conversation between governments and governments, that's up to you. If any European government says, well, we want to deal with reparatory justice, we say, government, that is yours. So we have divided our work into the Commission dealing with civil society, and we're leaving the governments to deal with the governments. However, we are going to be there. It's not going to be a standing down. We are going to be there. We're just going to say that governments really should negotiate with governments, and that is the best way. But we will be there to advise them on how to proceed. So that is where we are right now. I can go on a bit longer, but I don't want to. I think in a nutshell, that summarizes, I think, what we can celebrate. And there are many things we must celebrate. This decade of solidarity, we must celebrate. Bringing Africa, finally bringing the African governments on board. That is a major scope of work that we must celebrate. And as we celebrate these achievements, I think we now have to prepare for some big strategies going forward. And I will say this, colleagues, if we look at the 20th century, there's some lessons to be learned about how we made progress in the 20th century. The civil rights movement. We know it cost us a great deal of human life. We know that. But we saw how the 20th century brokered all of that. African independence, end of apartheid, civil rights in the US, independence in the Caribbean. Those were major 20th century achievements. I believe it's a laboratory. We can go back in that laboratory and look to see what lessons we can extract from that long 20th century and what relevance it can share with us for how to deal with this reparations movement that we now have. We no longer have episodes. We now have a movement, and it has to be guided by knowledge, by concepts, by strategies. So I think we need to spend some time on how we do this 21st century thing better than we did the 20th century one. Thank you.
Right, all right. Well, I would guess, Professor Beckles, that we would want to hear from any of the other colleagues from in various commissions and whatnot in terms of the floor. And we know Professor Beckles has been very, very busy, so I'm going to help him a little bit in that regard. So the floor is open to hear. We've heard the big picture and have laid out the key question of what civil society will do and what governments will do, the critical issue of governments coming on board. And you're right, that was a part of the Accra Summit #1, where President Adu, and I remember you being in the room, and when President Adu rose and raised, and you visibly thanked him and thanked, and you recounted what happened at Durban and how that was a turnaround and what that really meant. And Cam later on will talk about the global circle and some of the work that's happening. But that was Accra 1, and then subsequently there was a subsequent meeting,
yes,
when the governments came on board and whatever, and we've had to work with them and to kind of hold on to them a little bit, because you know how these leaders will do, and we've been doing that as well. But it would be good to hear just from some of the other commissions, in terms of work. And then certainly we also mentioned that we wanted Dr. Marine to be able to share her work as well. So
thank you.
Well,
thank you, Ron. And before Eric jumps in, let me just say that CARICOM Reparations Commission is a collective. It's a collective. We have an executive, and we share the work out among ourselves. We know there's a massive scope of work, so we would divide the work up among ourselves, because we are all part-time. We are all part-time reparationists, so we have to divide the work equally. So my colleagues are all there, and I urge them all to speak about what they have been doing. I know Eric was down in Costa Rica or somewhere in the last couple of days. So anyway, the floor is yours, Eric.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ron. I've been focusing on two areas, particularly as we create the global African movement. The first has been with the church. I've had some time with Vice President Marquez and a small group putting together an apostolic exhortation to get the Pope to apologize. That's a long process. The bottom line is that we were expecting in May this year that Vice President Marquez of Colombia would have met with the Pope with this document, and the Pope within a year would have apologized. We found out that there were 28 papal bulls that were involved in chattel slavery, going back from 1302, a papal bull called Actam. So that's the process. And I know recently I joined with Cam and his group that's also doing some work with the Pope. So we're getting synergies in terms of a critical element, because if the Pope were to apologize, the global reparations movement would change dramatically.
Eric, let me just put a pin on that, though, because I think that gets to really the heart of what Professor Beckles is saying as well, and why we have to begin to, we almost need to begin to synthesize a quarterly conversation or something or other, because when we left Accra 1, we went to the Vatican, right, and we launched a Vatican initiative, right, and so we want to make sure that if we put our heads together, then it'll all be strong, because we'll all be working on the same page. So I didn't want to interrupt you, but I just wanted to make that point.
But that's happening because I'm working now with Cam and his group,
right,
to make sure that there's an integration with what Vice President Marquez is doing with what his group has been doing, the group that visited the Vatican. The second big issue is an issue that we ignore because it doesn't directly affect us in CARICOM and in Europe, but it's land rights. In Latin America, we have 140 million Afro-descendants, and their biggest issue is land rights. In Colombia, in Costa Rica, where Dr. Hilary Brung and myself were just there, they're stealing ancestral lands. In Latin America, Afro-descendants are claiming 205 million hectares of land. They've only legally got 9. And in Costa Rica, they're using maritime laws, they're using conservation laws to steal lands from African ancestors. So that land issue is central, because land is generational wealth. It was a big issue for Vice President Marquez, for the Costa Ricans, for the Mexicans, and for the Brazilians. So as CARICOM, we are trying to bridge that, to bring that issue into the global architecture of reparations. So that's what I'm doing in the short. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
I think someone may speak on the 10-point plan. We've just revisited.
Do that, Eric.
Yes.
I was about to do that.
Okay.
Essentially, it's as a small group of editors, we have really collected information from all of our national commissions in a review of our 10-point plan. We're at a stage now where that draft is with our chairman, Professor Hilary Beckles. The draft basically expands on a lot of the concepts.
Doreen, I should say, I have signed off. I signed off. I told him, you guys have done a great job. I have nothing to add. So I've signed off.
Yeah. well, the issue is that it's a plan of the CARICOM government. It's really not a plan of the CARICOM Reparations Commission, although we own it in that sense. And so that has to be signed off by CARICOM governments, and we hope that that will happen soon. The plan, as I was saying, it expands in many ways on a number of the concepts, a number of the visions that we saw in the original 10-point plan. I don't know if I am at liberty to talk a bit more about at least one addition, and I think it's a very important addition to the plan. It's the whole issue of gender that we have added as one of the 10 points. It did not exist in the first plan, and what we did is that we combined the two cultural issues, those issues about heritage, those issues about general culture, into one of the points and made space for a point 6, point 7, whichever one it is, to deal with gender. Outside of that, I've been working with 2 African groups. I've been working closely with a group called Africa Celebrates out of Ethiopia. And for the first time this year, their September meeting is dedicated to reparations. The same thing is happening with the African Studies Association of Africa. Meeting with them last year in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, introducing to many of those African scholars the work that was going on in this part of the world around reparations, to the extent that we are now invited back to their meeting towards the end of this year, also to deal with reparations. I think Dr. Hilary Brown will talk a bit more about our September African Union possibilities meetings. And so I will end there.
If I may add there, Chairman, what we are doing with the 10-point plan document, because of the global demand for this document and the regional demand, we decided we will expand upon the 10 points. In other words, we will fill out the narrative of each point and produce a book of about 50, 60 pages, so that we can print this book and make it available not only online, but make it physically available across the region and the world. So that we were inspired, of course, by the way in which Kwame Ture and Hamilton put together Black Power. And everyone was able to read what Black Power was about or was not about, what have we. But that little book, Black Power, for my generation, transform our grasp of what it is that we were seeking to do back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. So the 10-point plan, we were influenced by that. We're going to put it therefore into a small book with the content that fleshes out the meaning of each point. So the 10 points would have about 5 or 6 pages of expansion, elucidation, so that everyone could have their 10-point little book as a kind of manifesto if they want to keep it as that, and so on. So that is really what this is all about. And we're hoping that in the next 2 months or so, that book would be available. And of course, I also wish on behalf of the CRC to thank Don Rojas for his excellent editorial work on this document in the first round, and all of my colleagues who have then polished it. So that is a scope of work which we believe is significant.
Wow, great.
Okay, well, I think in addition to all of what has been said, probably our two major projects, the 10-point plan and the regional negotiating strategy. I would probably just add a little bit more what's happening at the level of heads of government, and to highlight some of the commemorations around which we may want to plan to do something jointly. So essentially at our heads of government meeting in February, and I should say that just before that, the African Union Assembly meeting in early February, Prime Minister Motley was invited, and she went to that meeting and gave her usual rousing address. And out of that came a commitment to having the second Africa CARICOM Summit of Heads of Government in September in Addis. The 7th of September is Africa CARICOM Day. And coming out of the first summit in 2021, and so now the second summit will be convened. And I was speaking with the Secretary General this morning, because she's here for the permanent forum as well for the first couple of days, and saying to her that I thought it would be good, I think it would be good if we could have some side events related to that convening in Addis, and see how perhaps it can be something around the second decade, definitely something around the AU year for reparations. So in other words, so that it's not only just the heads meeting, but that we will be able to use it as a rallying point for consolidating the movement in Africa and with the diaspora. So that's the 7th September summit. And at heads in February, we had a visit, a call from the head of the European Commission, that is Ursula von der Leyen. It was the first time that the head of the European Commission had actually come to a heads of government meeting to engage with
the European Union. The president, she's the president of the European
Union. Yes, but the Commission is the implementing arm. So same, yeah, it's two sides of the same coin. So she was challenged at the meeting by the Prime Minister of Grenada, and he told her straight that the time has come for us to discuss reparations with the European heads. And so during the meeting, she committed to organizing a meeting of our heads, or representatives of our heads. She really made the offer to Prime Minister Motley, but I imagine that more, that other heads will go as well, and to arrange a meeting where we can begin have that conversation that is long overdue. So we also expect that to happen later this year. I think there's a EU CELAC meeting in Colombia in November, and there are possibilities there as well for engagement. So I think we're getting to the point where, and she acknowledged openly, crimes against humanity, and we think we have her on board to facilitate those meetings that we have been trying for some time. But so essentially, we have a second decade. We have the African Union Year for Reparations, and we have the bicentenary of Haiti's indemnity payment for their freedom. So it is a year that we urgently need to mark. We need to do not commemorative things, but also to launch, I think, some significant projects that can run more long term and go through the decade, so that we identify some real outcomes or areas that we want to make an impact on, even as we might be doing commemorative activities to mark these particular anniversaries or achievements, and to engage with the public. So I'm seeing two levels at which we could consider working closely with NAARC and with the AU and so on to do some activities this year, or at least one major activity. The question that I had though, and I would love to hear your response on that, but let me just add another question for you to factor in at the same time. So of course, seeing all of what has been happening with the current US administration, certainly I have been very concerned and wondering, well, now what will happen to the reparations movement in the US? So but based on what you're saying, it sounds as though you're not daunted, you're moving ahead. But I just wondered, what is your assessment? Is it that it's retarded, but it has a stumbling block, but still moving ahead? It's going to be seriously affected. Just what is your assessment? What's the prognosis in terms of moving ahead in spite of the new challenges that you're faced with? So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay, can we hold that question and we'll address it. We want to continue to get whatever other reports people might want to share from the Caribbean side. Let me just say parenthetically that, and I said this to my comrade Dobreen, I will never, ever forget the wonderful experience of being invited to speak to the Emancipation Watch Service in Antigua several years ago. That was one of the great experiences of my life. And I really, really just want to, again, just thank you for that invitation. It was wonderful. But it was, again, the synergy, the synergy that we've been working on, reinforcing each other in terms of building out and encouraging each other and creating that, what Jesse Jackson was saying, keep hope alive, keeping that psychological momentum, rolling.
Well, it might be time for you again or another member of NAARC. We are now planning for that event. It takes place on the 31st of July into the 1st of August. We are now in planning in the Antigua and Barbuda Reparations Support Commission. It was wonderful having you. Wonderful having you, Dr.
Mr. Chairman, allow me to add to that sentiment. In the building where I work, there's a plaque there that marked the moment that Dr. King arrived in Jamaica. And he made 4 visits to Jamaica. Whenever he was feeling tired and exhausted, whenever he was losing hope, he would come down to the Caribbean and he would say, this is a place where Black people are in the majority. This is where they have a parliament. This is where they have political processes. This is where, and he would be reinforced, re-inspired, and he would go back into the struggle. So, I think he did make a statement that the reason why God made a big landmass and then he made islands off the coast was to allow people to move between the two for whatever reason they found it. And Dr. King found solace and fortitude in his visits to the islands. And that's what we're all about.
Great. Okay, all right. Go ahead, Dr. Dublin. Go ahead.
I honestly, I feel encouraged by the synergies between NAARC and CRC. We have come a long way because we ourselves in the younger days were motivated by the civil rights movement. That's what we used to look up to. Dr. King and all the others, and that's what kept us going until we were able to reach that stage where CARICOM took that important decision in 2014. That's how in Dominica, there's always a movement of back to Africa, but it was mainly pushed by the Rastafarians. Back to Africa, every year they would have a march. So that concept, that narrative was always there. But when the reparations committee was formed, we link up with them, and since then, every year we have been having activities with them. So far, all what was said by Sir Hilary Beckles and the others are really in sync. And that question which Dr. Brown posed, I would really like to get an answer, because I myself, I'm very concerned about how we're going. But I think also that synergy which we have, it can serve as a motivation and support for whatever struggles. I wanted to particularly include the fact that in the Caribbean, we were instrumental in getting maybe the African royals to actually touch base in the Caribbean. I mean, that was a historic moment and fit. I mean, we talk about royals, the concept, when you talk about royals, you think of Britain and other places, but then we made people realize, but we have royals, we had mighty kingdoms in Africa, and the fact that they were able to touch Caribbean soil, that was a great aspect, another connection which bridging the gap nicely. So while we're working in the government through the AU, we actually on the ground with the royals and their kingdoms, which we tying up another aspect. I wanted to particularly focus on the native genocide aspect, because we're fortunate in Dominica to have the Kalinago people, and I can tell you that they have come a long way, because in terms of representation, they have the Kalinago Council, which is like a local government. They have a Department of Kalinago Affairs, and they also have a parliamentary representative in the Senate. So they have representative at 3 levels in the political process, and it's really doing good for them in terms of the development. So we can say, as part of the reparation, we're starting to see movement in terms of the reparation for native genocide. We work closely with them, and we do things together. So I wanted to more focus on that aspect. And the project I wanted to mention, which is important, in Dominica, we have what we call a Barracoon building. That was a building that when the enslaved Africans were taken from Africa, they landed, some more landed there. The building is still there, but it's being used as a city council office. One of our plans for this year is to see if we can get that building reverted to its historical significance. So we form a committee. We'll meet with the Prime Minister already, indicated his willingness. We have to meet with the PAREP for the Gozo constituency, and that is one of our projects which we feel if we can get that back to the historical significance, we can really, what we're thinking of is to have there as a walk-in museum, walk in and you can see all the history, music, and everything. So that's one of the major things we're focusing on for 2025.
Great.
Ron, before you transition, I think we need to acknowledge some realities in the global movement. If you're in the Caribbean, your perspective on reparations may be different than if you're in the UK. I certainly found that out last week when I was at the Pan-African Conference. If you're in Latin America, your perspective is different. If you're in the USA, based on all the things that we heard from your group tonight, you have a different strategy and a different perspective because you're facing different issues. We are sovereign states, you're not. Same thing in the UK, same thing in Holland. And I think as we work to bring this global movement together, we have to recognize that these differences need to be resolved, and we need to come up with some holistic view. We don't have a legal strategy, but we have legal activities, and we need to holistically bring these things together so that we can take another giant leap forward. So in essence, what I'm saying is that, some people want to destroy capitalism as part of reparations. That's not going to happen. The geopolitics of the world is changing dramatically. Some want land within the USA, some want land within Europe. We somehow have to bring all these different views together, analyze them, socialize them, and come with a perspective that allows us to work in unity, even though we may be taking different approaches. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Let me quickly just make a couple of points, and then let's no, first let us hear from Dr. Maureen Shepard to add to the contribution just in terms of the work that she's been doing. And we certainly want to thank her because she has contributed as we were trying to develop some strategies within NAARC. She certainly was able to be helpful. And I know that Robin Rusimmons, for example, had a wonderful visit to when she was head of the Center for Reparations Research and so forth. So Dr. Maureen, I know you've been listening patiently, and that's unusual for you because you usually speak right up. So you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Brother Ron. Thank you. Greetings, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to add my bit. I want, of course, to congratulate the NAARC on its 10th anniversary. I was at that lodge. I was happy to be there. I also wish to thank CARICOM for giving me the opportunity to serve on the CRC, and especially to have been given the privilege to direct the Center for Reparation Research for 7 years. It was such a good idea, urged by our chair, to get CARICOM to establish a dedicated, and UWI, to establish a dedicated research center. And I was really humbled to have been given the opportunity, the privilege to lend my scholarship to that project. And I applaud the leadership of Professor Sir Hilary Beckles and the loyalty and the commitment of members of the CRC, because the experience gained from working with the working group of experts on people of African descent up to 2015, when I led the process of getting the decade and to elaborate the program of activities for the international decade, which failed to have reparation in the theme despite my efforts. The states would not agree to have reparation, justice, and development. So we had to settle for recognition, justice, and development. And of course, so grateful for my work with the CRC since 2013. But the experience I gained from working with the CRC, I have to say, gave me the experience and confidence to join the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination and to seek UN support for the work we do in terms of that treaty body, which is the first treaty body as we know. So I benefited so much from my colleagues' guidance and their knowledge, and I was able to pool my own experiences before 2013 in working with reparation to the work that we have done and to where we are today. So I was able to take that experience, as I said, to the international space. And that opportunity came in 2016 when I lobbied and gained a place on the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, first CARICOM citizen to ever be on that body. Not the first Caribbean person, because Cuba was the first Caribbean country to have a delegate on CERD. And then so many decades later, here comes a CARICOM member. So this year marks the 60th anniversary of the UN Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. And I just wanted to say that when I first joined CERD in 2016, reparation was like a bad word. And I was the bad person who kept bringing it up and asking states about what they were doing in that area when they came before us to say, to have a dialogue with us. And I'm so happy now to see the day when, because of, the minute an African person joined the committee, then I got more support. And now we have reached a stage in CERD and in the UN where reparation is no longer a bad word. So I'm really, really very grateful for the opportunity given to me by CARICOM to be in that space, and to the CRC for the knowledge which I gained and the opportunities I got to really hold my confidence to confront the CERD and to push. Now I have the support of the US member, Gay McDougall, and my South African friend, Pansy Tlakula, and now a member from Cote d'Ivoire. And so now we have a majority of African people on the CERD. So that has really helped the fact that we now are going to elaborate a general recommendation on reparation. And I wanted to bring this to the attention of both of our committees. I've already shared this with members of CRC because we wanted to have people send in their views on the concept paper before we, complete the elaboration of this general recommendation. Now, the committee issues general recommendations to clarify and interpret the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. And these GRs are considered authoritative and provide guidance to states parties on fulfilling their obligations under the convention. They address various issues related to racial discrimination, including the right to health, preventing racial profiling, and combating racist hate speech and xenophobia, especially against migrants of African descent and Africans. So I want you to know, finally, that during the 115th session, which starts next week, the committee will hold a half day of general discussion to inform the development of this general recommendation on reparations for the historical injustices from the chattel enslavement and the enduring harms to people of African descent, organized by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And I'm hoping, and I've circulated the information, I'm hoping that the CRC and others would have sent in their comments on the concept paper, which we circulated, and that at the half-day discussion on April 25 from 3 to 6 p.m., some of you will be able to join, watch the deliberations on UN Web TV, and that at least one member of the CRC and the NAARC will be able to actually be in Geneva to be there to add your input. So you can, send to me for any more information that you have. But I just wanted to twin my experiences in the CR, which is of course an offshoot of CRC, so CRC generally, and to thank my colleagues for the support, the information, the knowledge, the confidence to be this, person from the Caribbean who won't shut up internationally and who actually got the CERD to reach this stage. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to at least share this with everyone. Thank you very much.
You're certainly welcome. I want to also acknowledge that VP Franklin has a leading author, editor, reparation activist, and a member of NAARC who has been on leave, but we hope is going to rejoin us, actually, has joined us. So VP, would you like to at least step in and introduce yourself quickly? VP. VP.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay. All right. I've been attending these events, and for the 15th.
VP, we can hear you, but we can't see you, man. Put your video on so we can look at you.
There you go.
Does that help?
There you go.
Oh, there I am. All right. I've been attending these meetings. As in case you knows, I was at the event yesterday, and I was at the Scholars for Social Justice meetings for this upcoming activity on April 17th. I've just been paying attention to what the strategies are, and that socialists are supposed to be meeting in Chicago in a couple weeks. And in our book, Reparations and Reparatory Justice, we have an article by Brian Jones on the socialist support for Black reparations. So, and he's a very well-known socialist. He ran for governor or vice governor in New York on the Socialist Party. But he has an article in our book, along with all of you, Ron and Hillary, and many others. They all are in there. But there is this article by Brian Jones on the reparations and the socialist movement. And the socialists are meeting in Chicago coming up, and I looked at their agenda, and I didn't see reparations and reparatory justice as part of the agenda of what these socialists were doing. And so I was trying to get somebody to go to Chicago for this socialist meeting and say, well, there is a socialist position on reparations. Should you be invested? So that's all and so in our book, we're trying to deal with this issue of how to respond to the Trump era.
Right.
How do we respond in the Trump era? We have had to respond in eras like this before. And so in this memoir I'm working on, I explain all of the stuff that I had to go through during the Reagan years. When the neoconservatives and stuff were all in power and stuff, and they were after my ass, and they got me. And so I do that, and so I know how they operate. And so I've been trying to figure out how can we, a way of entering into this with Trump, with the Trump years. And so I'm used to it from the Reagan years. Okay, all right, so I'm used to it. And so what Mary and I have been working on, Mary Frances Berry, and I have been working on is a broader reparatory justice strategy that would include the Black reparations movement and the environmental justice movement. We benefit when environmental justice policies and practices are put in place to save our lives, to save our lives, literally. And so we've been working on this in terms of, okay, how can you intrude? And so more and more there, we see how ways of dealing with Trump are, you notice that, because he just comes up with to try to crush you. And so what we are teaching, we will send to you, and you can decide on whether or not whether Tom should discuss it, whether or not the others should be discussing it as a reparatory strategy to deal with the injustices that are associated with climate change and Black folk. Okay, so I'm gonna send that to you.
Okay, good. I'm rushing a little bit because I see Dr. Williams, whom I did call on you, Dr. Williams. I did call on you for an introduction. So your note that you didn't get a chance to introduce yourself simply was because, I can't see you. We can't see you. We don't know whether you're sitting there or whether you're, but I did call on you. And so I want to also have you do introduce yourself before you have to leave. And then we are wrapping up, by the way, and we're going to take a few more minutes and we will be wrapped up. So Dr. Williams, you are invited to introduce yourself. Dr. Williams, going once. Because there was a note in the chat that suggested that. Anyway, so having done that, let me do 2 or 3 things quickly. number one, I just want to take note of and Don Rojas has certainly been very instrumental in this, the engagement of IBW in Grenada, which is a result of the change in government in Grenada, because with our limited resources, we are supporting progressive Pan-Africanist leaders and countries. And we see the possibility of that happening in Grenada. And many of you may be aware that we're going to be honoring the life and legacy of Louise Langdon Little that was referenced in one of the presentations on May 17th, but it'll be a part of a broader celebration that will be going on from the 14th through the 17th in Grenada. And so all of you are invited to come. Some of you have received specific invitations and may have conflicts in schedule and whatever, but I hope that you're able to, you're certainly welcome to come. There's still space for that to happen. It has taken off. We have lit, the country's on fire with this. So Dr. Williams, are you back?
Hi, good night.
Yeah, but could you introduce yourself? we did invite you.
Yeah, I'm sorry about what happened. At the same time, I got an overseas call and I was getting a technical issue. Okay, my name is Dr. Absat William. I'm a dentist working here in Antigua. I'm from Africa, Niger. So I'm just happy to be in I don't know, I feel just so happy, to be in this. And then, my English is not so perfect. My original language is French, but I say it's nice to hear from everybody. And really, I feel really happy to hear. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to make I wanted to make a comment about the Grenada piece, but I also wanted to make a brief statement in relationship, and I want Cam will pick up on this in relationship to the wound that Professor Beckles talked about, and as Cam closes, I'm sure he will talk about this, and Dr. Grills is certainly welcome to chime in. We did major work on this issue and the recently concluded Accra Summit. Major work on this issue. And so I just want to assure people, and by the way, Professor Beckles, as we were doing it, you weren't able to come, but my conversation with you, either on the phone or whatever, I stressed that, and I think you'll be pleased with the way that is occurring. I'm going to take the prerogative of just quickly synopsizing the U.S. reparations movement and then yield the floor to Cam for really to talk about the global circle. And it's not that very difficult, really. And that is that the major resources that are required to deal with reparatory justice in the United States will come from federal reparations. That movement is stalled, though not dead at all. We have built a robust movement. We will be looking for a change in the Congress in order to move it forward, and ultimately an executive order to bring it into existence by presidential executive order. So it's not dead, but the orange man getting elected was not helpful, but we're not moving. But the reparations, to quote Sister Nkechi, her book, reparations are on fire in the United States. And most of the action, however, is at the state and local level, which means that's not vast resources at the state and local level, though they're not inconsequential. There are, but the movement is very much alive and growing and developing and moving in a very, very positive direction. So there is no turning back. There's no turning back in terms of reparations in the U.S. And listening to some of the comments too, there are some of the ideas that we're also looking at in terms of the 10-point program and how it could be amplified and a number of things along those lines as well. So in a succinct way, again, the resources that we need at a huge level will be at the federal level. So we obviously cannot neglect that. But the fact that we have California, New York, Maryland, and hundreds of cities, and it keeps growing and growing and growing, means that this movement is very much alive in the United States. So having said that, I want to now yield the floor to Cam to talk about the global circle. And the reason why that's important is because there's this whole question of the connectivity of the tissue that we're talking about and how we bring pieces together and whatnot. So Cam, want to just yield the floor to you to sort of talk about the global circle, and because it's very apropos given the whole need for dealing with how we connect with each other.
Thank you, Dr. Daniels. If you can, check out the chat as well. I want to just say one thing, a couple of things on the question around what's happening in America. We've built a tremendous amount of political will over the last 5 or so years. 88% of Democrats in Congress signed on to the two federal bills. The 3 largest cities in America, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, all have reparations commission. Those states where those cities reside, Illinois, New York, and California, all have state reparations commissions. I just want to quickly share this particular chart. There's something I put together in 2024. The Liberation Ventures did a poll on reparations, and the question was asked, do you support a reparations commission? And in 2019, I had some data from Huffington Post poll where they asked the same question. And down at the bottom, it shows Democratic and Republican. In 2019, 20% of the Democrats opposed. In 2024, just 12%, 40% decrease. Among Republicans, 75% opposed the Reparations Commission in 2019. That number is now 47%. So we see that 53% of Republicans either are unopposed to or support a reparations commission. That's unheard of. So it's not dire for reparations in America. We have to tell the correct narrative, and we have to keep working on the political will in this country. So I just wanted to share that. As far as the global circle of reparations healing, it was designed to be a network, and we're operating within 6 critical areas: movement building, partnerships, global structures and economic policy, political actors, and interreligious players dealing with the Vatican and so on, health, inter and intergroup health, and the last one deals with narrative building. We talked about the 5 areas of full repair, with the last one being rehabilitation. At our Cross Summit 2, we determined that area of rehabilitation has to be defined as healing for African people. And we had a conference that was centered on healing, because that's an area, as Dr. Beckles stated, not only the intergroup healing of how Africans and people of African descent had this, this history of exchange, or the people of Europe and Africans had this period of exchange, and people are blaming Africans for selling Africans. And we dealt with that, but also the various other ways in which the crimes of enslavement has harmed us mentally and psychologically, emotionally as a people across the globe. So we wanted to really stress that we're redefining that 5th component of reparations, rehabilitation as healing for the African world. And we're building out this global network. As Dr. Daniels said, we went to the Vatican, we're working with Eric, and we're working with others around other religious orders to push forth that initiative of bringing these other complicit players and the harms and ills of our community into the reparations dialogue, and hopefully get resources to engage in this repair. But the global circle is standing firm. We're building this network. We're putting the infrastructure together. We did get a few resources to begin to do that, and we're looking forward to expanding on the work of the Cross Summit 2. And we're having a side event tomorrow at 6 to 8 here in New York. Many of us are here in New York. We'll introduce the community, the global African community that's here in New York and also online, to the global circle and how they can join this network. So we're not all working in silos. We know what others are doing, and we're able to cooperate and build some symbiotic motion so that we all can win simultaneously. So I'll stop there, and I see Dr. Malvo's hand up, and I'll
Dr. Malvo.
Dr. Daniels.
Just very briefly, I wanted to respond to Sister Hilary Brown, who asked about what was happening here in the U.S. and how we're dealing with the cataclysmic political changes. And what I would say is that we've always had cataclysmic political changes. In the last decade, we've gained some major momentum on reparations, but even as we've gained that momentum, we've seen in certain states, Florida, there's a fellow in Florida, a legislator, who doesn't want the word reparations even used. And if you follow the Orange Man, you can see that he is, what's this commission called? Introducing Truth and Sanity, which is really talking about trying to take away our Black Sony and our Black Museum. So we're not discouraged, because we in Black America have been through this before, and we're ain't no ways tired. People are going to keep on, what Sterling Brown said. I paraphrase him because I'm not going to say strong men. Strong people keep on coming, keep on coming, keep on coming. So I'm happy that our global allies are paying attention to what's happening here, because that crazy man, his actions affect all of us. This most recent thing with the gentleman being picked up, quote, by mistake, and they won't send him back. That could be any of us. That could be any of us. I've been telling my young people, keep a copy of your passport in your pocket. Not the passport itself, but just a copy of it, because this is really very dangerous. But as dangerous as it is, what's even more dangerous is for us to be silent. So we will be joining our voices to fight back on all of this.
All right, thank you.
Lovely.
Okay, quickly, Dr. Grills, did you want to make an intervention just in terms of the Healing Summit that was historic, really?
Yeah, I'll, because the hour is late, I will simply say, we are an incredibly resilient people, but we cannot rest on that as some kind of proxy that we are doing well emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And I think one of the things that the Across Summit 2 brought to light was the kind of healing work that is necessary. And I'm talking about every nook and cranny of the diaspora. There's no place that has not been impacted in terms of the internalization of the stereotypes and the negative tropes, et cetera, about who we are, about the assault to our psyche in terms of our identity, compromising values and our North Star about who we are and who we are not. And then just the sheer weight of racism and generations of assault on our nervous systems. Literally, we have a lot of work to do. And I think that what happened in that meeting was that we got a chance to see that while we are in different parts of the world, there are some common denominators around which we can rally strategies to engage our communities and engage across the different age groups. Our young people need some things. Our elders need some things that are different. Our folks in the middle, are yet still needing some things that are different. And if we don't do that work very much as a central piece of the reparations movement, I'm not sure. We may have won the fight, but we will not necessarily realize the full benefits of it as a people because we haven't done the internal work and the community building and rebuilding work.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Grills. Let me, before yielding for final remarks to Professor Beckles, just say that I think we'll be combing through the notes, and we have seen a number of areas for synergy and collaboration and cooperation. And we certainly want to strengthen the bonds in terms of the collaboration and synergy. One of the things I want to bring to your attention, which I feel very strongly about, not in a negative sense, but that would be positive is a kind of protocol that when we are coming to each other's spaces, we will alert each other so that we're able to then take advantage of organizing events, assisting you or whatever with moving things. And our chair, you know, he pops up and he's here, he isn't thither and so forth. I know he doesn't have a chance very often to do that. So Grace, we're going to need you to help us with that, because the point is that we can amplify your visit if you need help or assistance and so forth. And I'll give you an example. There's someone in Jamaica that has a faith-based reparations movement, and they've invited me to come down to do a keynote or something or other. I said, well, I'll consider it, but I have to check with the I have to check with the Jamaica Reparations Commission first, because I don't know. You will tell me who's who and whatever and so forth, and so I'm not going to do that until it's signed off on in effect by them. And they can tell me how to guide, how I can work and move and how I can be supportive and really take that kind of guidance. It even gets down to when I do a vacation, because when my wife loves Antigua. She swears that the most beautiful beaches in the world is Antigua. So Debreen, if you may recall, when we did our little vacation, I guess last year or the year before, I reached out to Dobreem. I said, Dobreem, this is not official. We're just coming to hang out and to chill a little bit, but I want to let you know we're coming. And if we have a side moment, I'm willing to meet with the local commission and whatever. Dobreem, you were off on a major mission somewhere, but you turned me over to one of the local members, and lo and behold, that person came and met with me, and we had a good conversation, took us around, and we shared ideas and whatever. I'm just saying, it would be good if we worked out a system where we do that, because it will help us to, again, help each other as we're planning our visits and amplify our visits and so forth, in addition to all the other things that we're doing in terms of the synergy that will be built. And finally, I just want to thank everybody for joining it. This has been a great meeting. It was great to reflect on what we did in terms of the birth of NAARC and whatever. But of course, we don't drive things on sentimentality alone. It is a part of the inspiration. It is about the work that continues. And that is what is most gratifying, is to see we started at one place and systematically we have been moving forward. In order to continue to do that, we want to continue to build out these collaborative relationships. So I thank you so all for taking time out of your very, very busy schedules to be a part of this. And I now yield for final comments and to conclude us, our leader, our global icon, our global, he don't like all that, but he is. We all know that. And it's good that he's humble though. So that since he's humble, that's great. So we can, but Professor Sir Hilary Beckles to close us out.
Thank you.
Excuse me,
Thank you.
Professor Beckles. Dr. Daniels, did you see the chat?
No, I didn't. No.
First, I think Brother Shelley was trying to raise his hand and couldn't.
Who was?
Shelley Moorhead.
Well, I'm sorry. We yield the floor to you.
No, I yield. The meeting is over. Continue on.
Well, no, we don't. You can, if you have, please feel free to share. It's not that over. I mean, I didn't see your hand, and we did go around and whatever and so forth, but I didn't see your hand.
My hand was not raised, so it's okay. I yield to Dr. Beckles. I look forward to his closing remarks.
Okay, all right then.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I begin, of course, by paying respect to our comrade leader, Dr. Daniels, who has brought us to this moment and has led us ably over the decade. And we continue to admire you, how you have been able to keep so focused and so strong, maintaining your mental and physical health. And we celebrate you, and long may you continue, my brother. I wish to join with the sentiment you have expressed about how we share knowledge of each other's movement. I always have to apologize to my friends, because I regret so much that I'm a kind of part-time, as I said, a part-time reparationist, and there's nothing worse than a part-time anything. But I know, I have this university that has a role to play in all of this, and I have to wear that hat. and I do operate, I think, perhaps a bit too much in the realm of higher education around the world. And but I'm looking forward to my retirement from academia in 2 years' time, when I will be able to become a full-time reparationist. So that is my agenda. But I will add one thing, though, Comrade Leader, to your request. May I suggest that going forward from here on in, having gone through our tenure of partnerships and building confidence and respect and trust, that each time we meet, each time NAARC meets, that you have on your agenda a report from CARICOM. And each time the CRC meets, we will have on the agenda a report from NAARC, so that we will always kind of contribute to each other's conversation. I think that certainly at the CRC, our affairs would be really enriched by having on our agenda a report from NAARC and to have that presentation. That will be the ultimate demonstration of engagement. It will be the highest level. So Hilary Brown, I'm saying to you, Ron Robin, all of our colleagues on the executive, some of you are here to say that going forward, if I'm sure you would all agree, we can have in our quarterly meetings, we have a report from NAARC. And I just wish to reiterate that we have these three big issues in front of us. We have the bicentenary of the Haitian crisis, the reparations extraction from the Haitian people. That's 200 years. I think we need to have a special joint meeting to look at what we're going to do about that. We have the African Union 2025 as the decade, as the year of reparatory justice, and then of course the decade for African descendant people, the second decade. And I'm suggesting, Comrade Leader, that we have a joint meeting to talk about what can we do for the remaining 7 or so months of this year to maximize our impact on those three conversations. I confess, for example, that it has been on my mind that the Haitian bicentenary reparations extraction, to write a piece, to give a public lecture, and you push it back month by month by month. But we do need to make the world aware of how we feel about that 200-year experience. So yes, those are the three big ones. I'm sure there are many others. Now, in respect of the situation with the attack on DEI and the philosophy of that, it is directly an attack on Black people. There is no doubt. And I fully agree with what we heard earlier, that this is an attack on the psychic and intellectual integrity of Black people, because we know that we are the ones who have pushed DEI for 200 years. We are the ones who said that there needs to be diversity. Diversity is strength. We're the ones who have said that equity is the core to democracy, and inclusion, there is no democracy without inclusion. So if you are committed to the concept of democracy, and I believe that all Black people are, because all of us have experienced the other thing, which is the authoritarian state. We have lived through that for 500 years. If you lived on a plantation during slavery, the plantation owner was an autocrat. He was a dictator. He was a fascist. That one man or one woman can determine if you live or die, can rape your children. That one man had all of that power to destroy Black life at will without no reprisals, no court of law. So we have had 500 years of fascism in this continent. We know dictatorship better than anyone else. So we know that world, which is why we've said democracy is the other side of it. And we want that. We want the democracy. This is an attack on us Black people. And I do share the view that says it is an attempt to weaken our minds, to weaken our minds to the extent that we will begin to have self-doubt. We will lose hope. But the history shows that this is all dialectical. They do their thing, They say their thing. VP spoke about the Reagan years, the assault on Black people in California and elsewhere during the Reagan years. These guys will do their thing, and then we will do our thing. And it's dialectical. And, you know, this kind of right-wing fascist attack is really an attempt to push Black people back and to weaken us and to make us feel that there's no hope and there's doubt. But, you know, it's dialectical. We will bounce back. So this is the time. It's precisely in the middle of moments like this that we have to reaffirm our commitment, because we will defeat that and we will have our turn. And our turn will come. They will have their turn again in the future, but our turn is next. So all we have to do is remember that they will not be able to defeat those principles of diversity, of equity and inclusion. They will not be able to defeat them no matter what they try to do, because I believe the majority of humanity would prefer to live in a world where those values are respected. I think that is the high point of humanity, and I think it's hard to defeat those. Not for long, you can push them back. So I am confident, my friends, that we must push on even more affirmatively now. You don't run when there's a headwind. You buckle up, you zip up your chest, you put on your armor, and you get out there and get on with it. You know, when I was a youngster in high school in the UK, if we got to school late in the winter, we got a caning. If we got to school late in the summer, it was okay, because we had a headmaster who said, you know, we fought the Nazis in the cold. We were out there fighting the fascists and the Nazis in the winter and the snow and the frost and the sleet. And you young people have to know that when you're faced with adversity, you buckle up and get on with it. So I'm a victim of that theology, I'm afraid. This is the time where we show even more resolve and plan more creatively. So my principal recommendation, therefore, colleagues, is that we do more planning together, we do more organizing together, and we need to strengthen our resolve at this moment in this historical time. And I wish everyone all the very best and God's blessings on everyone. Thank you.
Let us all say Harambe, Harambe,
Harambe,
Harambe,
Harambe,
Harambe,
Harambe,
Harambe.
Harambe.
All right. Thank you all so much. We really appreciate it. Forward ever.
Backwards never.
Forward ever,
Backwards never.
backward never. Africa for the Africans, those at home and abroad.
Okay. All right.
Up, up, you mighty people.
Good night, all.
Goodbye.